In the shadow of Montana's unforgiving frontier, Eliza Freeman arrived as a mail-order bride only to find her promised husband murdered and her future vanished. Now trapped in a dangerous land where a black woman has few allies, she must forge an uneasy alliance with Augustus Montgomery, a wealthy rancher with secrets of his own. Their marriage of convenience becomes a battleground against corrupt land barons, prejudiced townsfolk, and the ghosts of their pasts. Eliza would discover that survival in the West required not just courage, but the willingness to fight for justice when the law itself was broken. The grand ranch house burned against the Montana sky, flames licking upward like hungry tongues. Eliza Freeman stood with the smoking rifle, her eyes reflecting orange fire. At her feet lay a man in an expensive suit, his blood seeping into floorboards that would soon be ash. "They'll hang me for sure now," she said, her voice steady despite everything. Augustus Montgomery pressed his hand against the bullet wound in his side. "Not if they can't find us." The sound of angry voices grew closer. Torches appeared on the horizon, bobbing like fireflies in the darkness. One horse remained in the stable. One chance. They mounted together, his arm around her waist, her hands on the reins. They rode hard into the night, leaving behind everything they had built. 6 months earlier, Eliza Freeman stepped from the stagecoach into Timber Creek. Dust swirled around her ankles. Her dark skin and fine clothes drew stares from those gathered outside the station, some curious, some hostile. She gripped her single trunk tighter. Inside, 3 books, a small family quilt, and 13 letters from Thomas Wilson, the man she had agreed to marry. A man whose face she had never seen. The driver dropped her trunk beside her. "Welcome to Montana Territory, miss." His emphasis on the word miss was not lost on her. The journey from Philadelphia had been marked by such subtle wounds. Small cuts that bled little individually but weakened over time. "Where might I find the Wilson homestead?" she asked the station manager. The man looked her over, frowned. "Wilson Place is 2 miles north. Follow the creek then west at the Split Oak." He hesitated. "Might be better if you waited till morning." "I've waited 3 weeks on that stagecoach. I won't wait another night." The walk gave her time to remember why she had come. The colored school in Philadelphia where she had taught had closed last spring. No positions remained for a woman like her, regardless of education. Then Wilson's advertisement had appeared in the paper. Teacher and wife wanted in Montana Territory, land and new beginnings. When she crested the hill and saw the modest cabin, something tightened in her chest. Smoke should have risen from the chimney. A man should have been waiting. The door stood ajar. Wrong. Inside, the copper smell hit her first. Thomas Wilson lay face down on rough wooden boards, the back of his head a ruined mess. The cabin had been ransacked, furniture overturned, a trunk emptied onto the floor. Eliza did not scream. She had seen death before during the war when she was just a girl. Instead, she knelt beside the man who was to be her husband and closed his vacant eyes. Horses approached outside. Male voices. Eliza slid behind an overturned table, making herself small. "You sure you got everything?" The first man through the door was tall, with a face like carved granite. "Nothing here worth taking anyway." The second man spat tobacco juice onto the floor near Wilson's outstretched hand. "Boss just wanted the deed." "What about the woman, the one he sent for?" "If she shows up, we'll handle her too." The third man, shorter than the others, noticed the trunk Eliza had left by the door. "Someone's been here." They found her quickly. The tall one yanked her up by the arm, fingers digging into flesh. "Well, what do we have here?" The crack of gunfire split the air. The man holding Eliza jerked backward, releasing her as he fell. More shots followed. The short man dropped. The one with tobacco juice on his beard ran for the door, but never made it through. Augustus Montgomery filled the doorway, rifle still raised. 2 ranch hands flanked him. His eyes, cold as Montana winters, took in the scene. "Miss Freeman, I presume." He knew her name. She didn't know his. "These men killed Thomas Wilson." "Yes, Montgomery lowered his rifle. And they'd have killed you too. He gestured toward the door. My ranch is safer than this place tonight. Augustus Montgomery's ranch spread across the valley like a kingdom. The main house stood 2 stories tall, with a wide porch and glass windows, luxuries in this territory. Eliza sat at his kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee. Wilson refused to sell his water rights, Montgomery explained. Small parcels like his are being bought up all over the territory. Some willingly sold, others needed persuasion. By men like those who killed him. By men who work for James Harrington, Eastern Money, railroad interests. Sheriff Clayton arrived as the sun set. He wore his badge like an afterthought, a formality rather than a commitment. He nodded to Montgomery and barely looked at Eliza. Nasty business at the Wilson place. 3 men tried to kill Miss Freeman, Montgomery said, after they'd already murdered Wilson. The sheriff wrote nothing down. And you happened to be riding by? I had business with Wilson. Convenient timing. The sheriff turned his attention to Eliza. No place for a colored woman alone out here. Best you head back east first stage tomorrow. After he left, Montgomery stood at the window watching the sheriff's retreating form. Clayton works for Harrington in all but name. Why are you helping me? Eliza asked. I'm not just helping you. Montgomery turned to face her. Harrington wants my land too. The largest piece in the valley. I've been fighting him off for months, but his political connections make it difficult. What does this have to do with me? I need someone to manage this place while I handle Harrington. Someone educated, someone with nothing to lose. He paused. I propose a marriage of convenience, Miss Freeman. You get security and a place here. I get a partner who can run this ranch competently. A business arrangement. Precisely. Separate quarters and mutual respect. Those terms are acceptable. They married the next morning at the courthouse. The clerk's hands shook as he recorded their names in the registry. News traveled fast in Timber Creek. By afternoon, Eliza noticed the stairs had hardened from curiosity to something uglier. 2 weeks into their arrangement, Eliza discovered the ranch was nearly bankrupt despite its impressive facade. Montgomery had leveraged everything to keep the property intact against Harrington's pressure. While organizing his study, she found letters addressed to Montgomery from Thomas Wilson. Letters dated months before her arrival. When confronted, Montgomery dismissed them. Business correspondence. Nothing relevant to our arrangement. But his eyes shifted away when he spoke. The first crack in his carefully constructed facade. The first sign that Augustus Montgomery was hiding something that went beyond land disputes. Eliza tucked the knowledge away like a weapon. She would build her place here in this harsh territory. She would discover what happened to Thomas Wilson, and she would learn exactly what kind of man she had married. Eliza woke before dawn each morning. The ranch ledgers spread before her like a confession. Numbers didn't lie like people did. The columns told a story of mounting debts and dwindling reserves. Augustus Montgomery might own the largest ranch in the territory, but its foundations were crumbling. She implemented changes, reduced waste, renegotiated contracts with suppliers, small victories in what might be a losing war. Montgomery watched, her work with guarded approval. They circled each other like wary animals, sharing space but never quite touching. His eyes followed her sometimes when he thought she wouldn't notice. Not with desire, but with something more complex. Assessment. Concern, perhaps regret. 2 separate bedrooms. 2 separate lives beneath one roof. A marriage on paper only. Timber Creek's general store smelled of coffee beans and leather. Eliza examined a bolt of calico while the storekeeper's wife, Sarah Johnson, measured out sugar. Folks are talking about your arrangement with Montgomery, Sarah said. Let them talk. I don't judge. This territory's hard on women without husbands. Sarah lowered her voice. Thomas Wilson was in here the day before he died, arguing with one of Harrington's men about land records. Did Sheriff Clayton investigate? Sarah's laugh held no humor. Sheriff wouldn't investigate if Harrington shot someone on Main Street at high noon. A well-dressed woman entered the store. Her silk dress and pearl earrings marked her as an outsider. The room quieted. Sarah straightened. Mrs. Harrington? She nodded. Mrs. Harrington smiled politely, then turned to Eliza with unexpected warmth. You must be Mrs. Montgomery. I've heard about your arrival. Word travels fast here. In small ponds, even smaller ripples are noticed. Mrs. Harrington selected gloves from a display. My husband speaks often of your husband's stubbornness, an admirable quality in the right circumstances, or a dangerous one. Indeed. She leaned closer. Your predecessor, Mr. Wilson, discovered something in the county records, something worth killing for. Before Eliza could respond, Mrs. Harrington straightened and paid for her gloves. Good day, Mrs. Montgomery. The county clerk's office was housed in a small building behind the courthouse. Dust motes danced in the sunlight streaming through the windows. The clerk, a nervous man with ink-stained fingers, watched as Eliza examined the land. Records. The pattern emerged slowly. Land purchases surrounding Montgomery's ranch and Wilson's small homestead, all bought by shell companies that traced back to Eastern investors. To Harrington. Wilson's land contained the creek that fed half the valley during dry seasons. Montgomery's northern border included the mountain pass where rumor placed the coming railroad. Outside the clerk's office, a commotion drew her attention. A crowd had gathered outside the saloon. In the center stood Montgomery facing three men, Harrington's men. Blood splattered the wooden sidewalk. Montgomery stood with his back to the wall, one eye swelling shut. The largest of Harrington's men drew back for another blow. Eliza moved without thinking. The parasol in her hand became a weapon, jabbing into the man's kidney with surprising force. He howled and turned. Touch him again and the sheriff will have more to ignore than a simple assault. The men backed away, muttering threats. Montgomery straightened, wiping blood from his mouth with the back of his hand. You shouldn't have interfered. Would you prefer I had watched? Something shifted in his face. Thank you. That evening she cleaned his wounds in the kitchen. The silence between them had changed quality. No longer tense, but something quieter. His breath caught when she touched the cut above his eye. Why didn't you fight back? Harrington wants a reason to have me arrested. Clay has a judge in his pocket who would be happy to oblige. Later, alone in her room, Eliza reread Thomas Wilson's letters. Something about the phrasing bothered her. His handwriting, so precise in some letters, seemed rushed in others. The paper quality varied. She examined the envelopes. A small bump in the seam of one caught her attention. Carefully, she slit the edge. Hidden in the envelope lining was a thin sheet of onion skin paper. Wilson's real message. I am a reporter for the Chicago Tribune investigating land fraud in Montana Territory. Your background in education and attention to detail make you the perfect partner in this endeavor. What follows is dangerous knowledge. The next morning, Harrington called a town meeting. The gathering took place in the church, the only building large enough to hold everyone. Montgomery sat beside Eliza in the back pew. His face remained impassive, but his knee bounced slightly, betraying tension. Harrington stood at the pulpit like a false prophet, handsome in a manufactured way, with perfect clothes and a practiced smile. Friends and neighbors, I come to you with grave concerns about criminal elements in our community. He spoke of progress, of the coming railroad and prosperity for all who embrace change. He spoke of obstacles to that progress. Augustus Montgomery has refused fair offers for his land. Now we know why. Harrington's voice hardened. Evidence has emerged connecting Montgomery to Thomas Wilson's murder. A land deed found in Montgomery's possession, signed over from Wilson under suspicious circumstances. Murmurs rippled through the congregation. Eliza felt the weight of stares, heavy with judgment and something worse, fear. Sheriff Clayton stepped forward. Augustus Montgomery, I'm placing you under arrest for the murder of Thomas Wilson. He was with me. Eliza's voice cut through the noise. The night Wilson died, all night. Clayton's smile was cruel. And where might that have been, Mrs. Montgomery? In his bed? Because word around town is you two keep separate rooms. Heat rose in Eliza's face. The crude implication hung in the air, their marriage exposed as the transaction it was. Are you calling my wife a liar, Clayton? Montgomery's voice was soft, dangerous. The room stilled. Clayton hesitated. I'll need more than her word. Then find it. Until then, keep your accusations and your hands to yourself. They left the church together. The crowd parted like water around stone. No one spoke. No one needed to. The battle lines had been drawn. That night, during dinner, Eliza placed Wilson's hidden letter on the table between them. Thomas Wilson was a journalist investigating land fraud. He specifically requested me as his mail-order bride because of my education and attention to detail. Montgomery stared at the letter. His shoulders slumped. How long have you known? That's not the right question. Eliza leaned forward. The right question is, how long have you known Thomas Wilson? Montgomery's silence confirmed her suspicions. These letters I found in your study. You were friends. Or something more. We were friends. Since the war. He touched the letter with weathered fingers. Tom contacted me 6 months ago. Said he was onto something big involving railroad land grabs throughout the territory. Needed someone he could trust on the inside. So you helped him. I tried. His voice cracked. I told him it was too dangerous, that Harrington had bought every judge and lawman from here to Helena. He wouldn't listen. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows like someone trying to get in, or something trying to escape. Why didn't you tell me this when I arrived? Because I didn't know if I could trust you. His eyes met hers directly for, perhaps, the first time. Because I failed him, and I was afraid I'd fail you too. Truth altered everything between them. The ranch house no longer felt divided into his space and hers. They met each morning over coffee, reviewing Wilson's notes and the evidence they'd gathered. Their hands sometimes brushed when passing documents. Neither pulled away. Storm clouds gathered on the horizon, mirroring the growing tension in Timber Creek. The land had been parched for months. Even the dust seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Montgomery traced his finger along a map of the territory. The railroad survey shows the main line cutting through this valley. Whoever controls this land controls access to the mountain pass. And the water rights. Harrington's buying both. He'll dam the creek, charge whatever he wants for access. Montgomery's jaw tightened. People will lose everything. Like you almost have. He didn't deny it. The silence between them had acquired new depth. Not empty space, but something fertile, like soil after winter. That night, the storm broke over the ranch. The sky tore open, rain coming in horizontal sheets. Wind rattled the windows like angry fists. Montgomery secured the barn while Eliza brought in the washing, both drenched to the skin by the time they stumbled back into the house. The electricity went out. By lamplight, they built up the fire. Eliza wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, her wet dress clinging to her frame. Montgomery changed into dry clothes, then brought her a cup of whiskey. For the chill. She accepted, their fingers touching on the glass. A spark without lightning. I had a wife before. His voice barely carried above the storm. Clara. And a daughter, Sophie. Eliza waited. Some confessions required space to unfold. Diphtheria took them both 6 years ago, while I was in Helena, fighting the first round of land grabs. He stared into the fire. I've been fighting ever since. Fighting because I wasn't here when they needed me. It wasn't your fault. Knowing that and believing it are different things. Eliza watched his profile against the firelight. The strong lines softened by shadow and memory. She thought of Philadelphia. Of doors closing in her face despite her education, of her father's pride when she earned her teaching certificate, and his quiet grief when the school closed. I taught children in Philadelphia, 36 students in one room, different ages and abilities. When the school closed, there was nothing left for me there. The whiskey warmed her throat. Thomas Wilson's letters offered purpose. And now? Now I have new purpose. Morning arrived with clearing skies and silent understanding. They worked, as partners now, shoulders touching as they reviewed county maps and land records. The ranch hands noticed the change. exchanging glances when Montgomery helped Eliza onto her horse, his hands lingering at her waist. In town, people watched them with open hostility. Sarah Johnson alone offered a smile of welcome. Her eye was blackened, her arm in a sling. "My husband lost our store," she said quietly. "Harrington called in loans no one knew existed. We're not the only ones." "He's consolidating power," Montgomery said, "and eliminating opposition." They gathered their supplies quickly. Outside the general store, a man stepped directly into Eliza's path. James Harrington himself, impeccably dressed, flanked by two men with guns barely concealed beneath their jackets. "Mrs. Montgomery, a word?" Eliza stiffened. Montgomery moved, closer to her side. "Alone, if you please." Harrington's smile never reached his eyes. "Just business." Montgomery hesitated. Eliza nodded slightly. "I'll be fine." Harrington led her to his office above the bank. The room smelled of leather and tobacco, Eastern luxury incongruous against the Montana backdrop. "You're an educated woman in unfortunate circumstances." Harrington settled behind his desk. "I can offer you a way out." "I'm not interested in your offers." $500 in passage back east. A teaching position arranged at a fine school in Boston. He leaned forward. "All you need do is testify that your husband confessed to killing Wilson over a land dispute." The sum would set her up comfortably. The position was everything she had wanted in Philadelphia. Freedom from this harsh territory and its harsher judgments. "Why would I betray my husband?" "Because he's already lost. Because that ranch will be mine by winter one way or another." Harrington's expression hardened. "Because a woman like you has limited options in this territory, and I'm offering a dignified exit." Eliza stood. "I believe this concludes our business." "Consider carefully, Mrs. Montgomery. This offer expires when you leave this room." She left without looking back. The street below felt unnaturally bright after the dimness of Harrington's office. Montgomery waited by their wagon, his posture rigid with tension. What did he want? To buy me, like he buys everything else. Something flashed in Montgomery's eyes. He helped her onto the wagon seat, his movements abrupt. They rode in silence, the wheels kicking up dust from the recently dried roads. At home, Montgomery disappeared into his study. Eliza found him, after dinner, a glass of whiskey in his hand, staring at a photograph of a woman and child. "Did you consider his offer?" The question hung between them like smoke. "No. You should have. It's a way out before everything falls apart." "Is that what you think of me?" Montgomery set down his glass. "I think you're smart enough to recognize a sinking ship." "Is that what we are?" "That's what I am." He turned away. "You were never meant to go down with me." The distance between them suddenly felt vast, all their careful progress erased by suspicion. That night, fire illuminated the sky. Not lightning, but deliberate destruction. The ranch's outbuildings burned, against the darkness. Montgomery and the ranch hands formed a bucket line from the well. Eliza worked alongside them, her skirts hitched up, her face streaked with soot. They saved the barn and most of the livestock. The bunkhouse was lost. The ranch hands would sleep in the main house tonight. Montgomery found her by the burnt remains of the storage shed. Blood streaked his forearm where embers had caught him. Without speaking, she tore a strip from her petticoat and wrapped the wound. "You should have taken Harrington's offer." "No. $500 in a teaching position, a new start." His voice broke. "I would have understood." "You would have been wrong." She finished tying off the bandage. Her fingers lingered on his wrist, feeling his pulse beneath the skin. Steady. Alive. "I didn't come west for security. I came for possibility." Montgomery's free hand rose to her face. Calloused fingers brushed a smudge of ash from her cheek. The touch became a caress. Eliza. Just her name. Nothing more needed. His lips found hers, tasting of smoke and promise. A kiss born of fire and shared purpose. Later, by lamplight, they laid out what they knew. The railroad survey maps, the water rights documents, land transfers with forged signatures. We need to connect Harrington directly to Wilson's murder, Eliza said, and to the falsified deeds. Montgomery's hand covered hers on the table. No longer strangers, no longer just allies, something more fundamental and fragile. Morning brought Sarah Johnson to their door, her face bruised darker than before, her hands shaking as she clutched a bundle of papers. My husband kept records, loans from Harrington with impossible terms, threats made to those who wouldn't sell. Her voice trembled. He's dead. Clayton says suicide, but I know better. She thrust the papers at them. This needs to end. After she left, Eliza and Montgomery added her evidence to their growing collection. A case built piece by piece against Harrington's empire of corruption. We need to take this to the federal marshal in Helena, someone beyond Harrington's reach. Montgomery nodded. We'll leave tomorrow. Outside, hoofbeats approached the ranch house. Through the window, Eliza saw Sarah Johnson's horse galloping riderless up the drive. They found Sarah Johnson's body in the creek bed, her throat bruised, her eyes open to the vast Montana sky. Careless disposal, a message intended for them. Montgomery carried her back to the ranch, her slight form cradled against his chest like a sleeping child. They buried her on the hill, behind the house. No minister came. Montgomery spoke the words, his voice stripped raw by grief and rage. She deserved better from this land. Eliza stood beside him, her hand in his. She had grown accustomed to death but never reconciled to its senselessness, never accepted its finality. They rode to Helena the next day. The journey took 2 days of hard travel, skirting main roads, sleeping rough under stars that watched, with cold indifference. They spoke little. Words seemed inadequate vessels for what grew between them. Simple touch communicated more. His hand at the small of her back, her fingers adjusting his collar. The federal marshal's office stood across from the territorial courthouse, a solid building that promised order and justice. Inside, Marshal, Weber listened to their evidence with impassive attention. He examined each document, asked pointed questions, took detailed notes. You understand these are serious accusations against a powerful man. We understand, Montgomery said. Harrington has friends in the territorial government, friends in Washington. Weber set down his pen. Friends who've already contacted me about your alleged land fraud activities, Montgomery. Eliza felt the floor shift beneath her feet. You've spoken with Harrington. His attorneys. Weber didn't meet her eyes. They've provided compelling evidence of their own. Falsified, Montgomery said. Perhaps. Weber gathered their documents into a neat stack. I'll investigate, that's all I can promise. Outside, Eliza's hands trembled with anger. He won't help us. No. Montgomery squinted at the setting sun. Harrington's reach is longer than we thought. They returned to the ranch under cover of darkness. No lamps burned in the windows. No ranch hands greeted them. The house stood, silent and watchful. Montgomery dismounted first, scanning the property with narrowed eyes. Something's wrong. 4 riders emerged from the shadows by the barn. Sheriff Clayton and 3 of Harrington's men. Behind them, James Harrington himself sat atop a gleaming chestnut horse, incongruously elegant against the ranch's weathered backdrop. Welcome home. Clayton's hand rested on his gun belt. Had a pleasant journey? Harrington dismounted with fluid grace. His boots gleamed despite the dusty yard. I've come to make one final offer, Montgomery. Fair market value for your land. More than generous considering the circumstances. What circumstances? The unfortunate evidence connecting you to Wilson's murder. Harrington gestured toward the house. The even more unfortunate documents my men found hidden in your study. Forged deeds, altered land records, a veritable conspiracy. You planted those. The territorial judge won't care where they came from, only that they exist. Harrington's smile was genuine in its satisfaction. I accept my offer. Take your colored bride and leave the territory, or face hanging for murder and fraud. Montgomery's shoulders tensed. Eliza saw the calculation in his eyes, the measuring of odds. 4 armed men against 1. Let me discuss it with my wife. Inside, Montgomery gathered their real evidence into a leather satchel. His movements were swift, efficient, a man accustomed to fighting losing battles. You need to leave through the back. Take the South Trail to the Blackfoot settlement. Morning Star will shelter you. We leave together. Eliza. He gripped her shoulders. You need to survive. You're the only one who knows the whole truth. I'm not leaving you. Outside, Clayton shouted for them to hurry up. Montgomery pressed the satchel into her hands, then unexpectedly pulled her close. His kiss tasted of desperation and something sweeter. Possibility. I should have kissed you the day you arrived. Harrington and his men burst through the front door before she could respond. Clayton seized Montgomery while the others began searching the house. Where are the real documents? Harrington demanded. Gone, Montgomery said, like your chances of taking this land. Clayton's fist connected with Montgomery's jaw. Eliza moved without thinking, grabbing a fireplace poker. She swung it hard, against Clayton's outstretched arm. Bone cracked. The sheriff howled. Chaos erupted. Gunshots splintered wood. Montgomery tackled one of Harrington's men through the window. Eliza ran for the stairs, the satchel clutched against her chest. Clayton pursued, his broken arm dangling uselessly, his good hand holding his revolver. Upstairs, Eliza barricaded, herself in Montgomery's study. Outside the door, Clayton fired twice into the lock. Wood splintered. The door held. Through the window, she saw Montgomery fighting 2 men in the yard. Harrington watched from a safe distance. The chilling calculation of a man who never dirtied his own hands. Clayton fired again. The door gave way. Eliza backed toward the cold fireplace. The satchel of evidence lay at her feet. All their work, all their hope. Clayton entered, his face twisted with pain and rage. Hand over those papers. Never. Then I'll take them from your corpse. Montgomery appeared behind Clayton, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. He launched himself at the sheriff. They crashed into the desk, grappling for Clayton's gun. The shot came suddenly. Montgomery staggered backward, pressing his hand against his side. Blood seeped between his fingers. Eliza grabbed the oil lamp from the desk and hurled it at the bookcase. Glass shattered. Flames leapt hungrily at leather-bound volumes. The dry wood caught immediately. Clayton's eyes widened in disbelief. You've killed us all. You killed yourself when you sold your badge. She helped Montgomery to his feet. The fire spread rapidly, smoke filling the room. Clayton fired wildly. The bullet splintered the floorboards at Eliza's feet. Montgomery surged forward. His fist connected with Clayton's jaw. The sheriff staggered back, tripped, and fell. His head struck the corner of the stone fireplace with a sickening crack. The scene from the beginning. The house ablaze. Clayton dead on the floor. Montgomery bleeding. Eliza with the smoking gun she'd pulled from Clayton's slack fingers. They'll hang me for sure, now, she said. Not if they can't find us. They escaped through the back stairs as the house became an inferno. 1 horse remained in the stable. They rode double, his arm around her waist for support rather than affection now. Behind them, men's voices shouted in anger and alarm. The Blackfoot settlement lay 3 days' hard ride to the north. Morning Star, their leader, had no love for the white settlers encroaching on traditional lands. But she respected Montgomery, who had always dealt fairly with her people. They arrived half dead from exhaustion and blood loss. Morning Stars. People tended Montgomery's wound while Eliza clutched the precious satchel of evidence. They'd been followed for the first day, then the pursuit had broken off. Harrington will claim we died in the fire, Montgomery said, his voice weak. And when he realizes we didn't? We'll be ready. They recovered in the settlement for a week. Eliza wrote out their testimony, creating 3 copies of all evidence. One they sent with a trusted Blackfoot rider to a judge in Dakota Territory, one to a newspaper editor Montgomery knew in Chicago. The 3rd they kept. After another week, they gathered a group of allies, other small ranchers who'd lost land to Harrington. a few merchants bankrupted by his schemes, 2 former deputies, who'd quit rather than follow Clayton's corrupt lead. Together they traveled to the territorial capital. Harrington had already arrived, spinning a tale of Montgomery's violent end and tragic madness. The hearing was held in the territorial courthouse. Harrington's face when they walked in would remain etched in Eliza's memory forever. The perfect composition of shock, rage, and fear. Their evidence was damning. Land records, witness testimonies. The bullet dug from Montgomery's side matched to Clayton's gun, but the most damaging testimony came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Harrington entered the courthouse wearing black, as if in mourning. She approached the bench with steady purpose. Under oath, she revealed decades of her husband's criminal dealings. She produced letters between Harrington and Clayton planning Wilson's murder. Her testimony left nothing of her husband's reputation intact. When asked why, she looked directly at Eliza. Some bargains cost more than we can bear to pay. The judge ordered Harrington's arrest. The corrupt empire collapsed like a house built on sand. Land deeds were restored to rightful owners. Timber Creek began the slow process of rebuilding. Augustus and Eliza Montgomery returned to their property. The grand ranch house was gone. Only the stone chimney remained, standing like a monument to what had been lost. "We could rebuild," Augustus said. Eliza looked at the blackened stones. Something different this time, something new. They built a modest home near the creek. The new structure had wide windows and a wraparound porch where they could watch the sunset together. Augustus formally proposed on that porch, a real proposal this time, with a small silver ring and words that came from the heart rather than necessity. Eliza accepted with one condition. Part of their land would become a school, open to all children, regardless of background, a place where education could flourish in this harsh territory. The school opened the following spring. Children from town, from surrounding homesteads, even from the Blackfoot settlement attended. Eliza taught reading, and mathematics, history, and science, the future of the territory sitting in orderly rows before her. Augustus taught them riding and ranching in the afternoons. His wound had healed, though it pained him in cold weather. They slept in the same bed now, their bodies finding comfort in each other's warmth. One evening, they sat together on their porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. Augustus's arm rested around her shoulders. Eliza's head leaned against him. A companionable silence born of shared struggle and triumph. A rider appeared on the horizon, silhouetted against the dying light. Eliza squinted, something about the figure's posture triggering recognition. Her body tensed. "It can't be," she whispered. "Thomas?" And that is all to the story. For now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from. Perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. It helps motivate me write each story. See you tomorrow.